There was a family that lived in a small village. They had lost their father when the children were very young. The mother, who had 3 children, Emma, John, and Mary, was left to care for them on her own. Life was tough for them. They were very poor and struggled to get enough food to eat. Sometimes, they would go to bed with empty stomachs. The mother worked hard, but it was never enough. The children didn't attend school like their friends did. They would watch as their friends walked to school, wishing they could join them. But their mother couldn't afford to send them to school. The mother did her best to provide for her children. She would go to the farm to work for people who would pay her a little money. But the money was never enough to feed her children properly. Mary, the eldest child, was very hurt by their situation. She would lie awake at night, thinking about how they could escape their poverty. She would ask God, "When will our condition end? How long will we have to live like this, struggling to find food to eat?" One night, Mary woke up to find her mother sitting on the bed, staring blankly into space. Mary asked her, "Mother, what's wrong?" Her mother sighed and said, "I don't know how we'll survive, Mary. I'm doing my best, but it's just not enough." Mary consoled her mother, telling her that things would be fine, that one day God would remember them and wipe away the tears in their eyes. Her mother stopped crying, and they both went to bed, hoping for a better tomorrow. The next morning, Mary's mother left for work, and Emma and John went outside to sweep the compound. Mary sat alone in the bedroom, shedding tears and crying as she talked to God. "Please, God, give me direction on what to do to save my family from this poverty," she prayed. After a while, Mary wiped away her tears and started thinking aloud. "Yes, I have to go to the city to look for something to do. At least, that way, I can put food on my family's table. I can help reduce the burden my mother is carrying." Mary thought for a moment, then continued, "I know some of my friends are in the city. If I go there, I can ask around, and by God's grace, I might meet one of them. Maybe they can introduce me to some work or other, where I can earn some small money to help my mother and siblings." Mary concluded that when her mother came back, she would tell her about her idea and see what she thought. Maybe it would look good to her. After thinking things through, Mary left the bedroom and went to the kitchen to boil the leftover food from the previous night. It wasn't much, but it would have to do for breakfast. As the day went by, Mary's mother came back from work, tired but relieved to be home. After resting and having lunch, Mary called her mother into the bedroom and sat her down. "I thought of something when you left for work this morning," Mary said, looking serious. Her mother looked at her with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. "What is it? What have you thought of, Mary?" Mary came closer to her mother and said, "I'm thinking of going to the city to look for work. Since I'm not helping you here in the village, maybe I can find something to do in the city. Maybe my friends can help me find a job." Her mother's expression changed to one of concern. "The city? Are you sure that's a good idea?" Mary nodded firmly. "Yes, Mother, I think it's a good idea. I need to do something to help us." Her mother thought for a moment before speaking. "But how will you go to the city? You don't know where your friends live, and you don't have a phone to communicate with them." Mary thought for a while before responding. "I remember writing down one of my friends' phone numbers on a piece of paper. Maybe I can use that to contact them when I get to the city." Her mother nodded slowly. "Okay, my dear. If you're determined to go to the city, please be careful. Don't go there to have fun or to mingle with boys. Focus on finding work and helping us." Mary smiled and promised. "No, Mother, I won't do that. I promise to do everything possible to change our situation and bring prosperity to our family." Her mother looked at her with pride and said, "I know you will, my dear. You have my full support. Just be careful and take care of yourself." Mary thought for a moment before answering her mother's question. I'm thinking of going to the city probably next week, her mother nodded. Okay, no problem. If you insist on going, you have my full support. Just remember to take care of yourself. Not long, next week arrived, and Mary prepared to leave for the city, just as she had told her mother. She gathered all her belongings and said goodbye to her siblings and mother, giving them a warm hug. They both shed tears as they waved goodbye to her. Mary had a safe journey and arrived in Lagos. As soon as she arrived, she went to a business center, hired a phone, and called the number of her friend that she had written down earlier, but to her greatest surprise and shock, the number was wrong. Mary paid the business center and walked to a nearby park, sat down, and started thinking about her life. She wondered whether she should go back to the village or continue her journey. As she sat there, Mary started shedding tears, crying out to God, "What kind of temptation is this? If only I had called them from the village before coming to the city. Now where do I start from? Should I go back or move forward? I'm totally confused." Mary was scared, knowing that Lagos was a city full of dangers. She sat alone, talking to herself, and crying out loud, "What am I going to do now?" For a while, Mary was confused and didn't know where to start her journey again. But then, she made up her mind to continue, no matter what. "Whatever comes my way, I'll take it," she said to herself. "By God's grace, I'll meet a good person who can help me," with newfound determination. Mary stood up, wiped away her tears, and started walking, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Mary wandered through the city, feeling lost and confused, she approached a woman who was getting into her car. The woman, who appeared to be in her mid-40s, looked at Mary with concern. "Hey, young lady, you look so confused. Where are you going?" the woman asked. Mary stood there for a moment, unsure of how to respond. "Madam, I just came to Lagos today, and the people I was supposed to call, their number is wrong." "I don't know where to go," Mary explained, feeling tears well up in her eyes. The woman looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Where did you come from?" "What's your name?" Mary politely introduced herself. "My name is Mary, ma'am," the woman sighed. "Okay, Mary. I don't know you, and to be honest, helping strangers like you is very difficult these days." Mary's eyes began to well up with tears as she pleaded with the woman. "Please, madam, I'm different. I'm not like other people. I need serious help. I came to the city to find work so I can feed my family. We're very poor, and I'm all they have." The woman's expression softened, and she smiled. "I love women like you who are courageous enough to do everything to save their families. For that, I will help you." Mary's face lit up with gratitude as she thanked the woman, wiping away her tears. "Thank you, God will bless you." The woman smiled and asked Mary to get into the car. "Come on, let's go home. We can go together." Mary's heart filled with joy, and she quickly got into the car. The woman drove safely through the city, and they chatted along the way. As they approached the woman's house, Mary felt a sense of relief wash over her. Maybe, just maybe, her luck was starting to change. Miss Sonia, the woman who had picked Mary up from the road, showed Mary to a cozy room where she could keep her bag and rest for the night. After a few minutes, Miss Sonia returned with 2 cups of hot tea and handed one to Mary. As they sat down in the room, Miss Sonia started asking Mary questions. Mary politely explained how poor they were in the village and how she had come to the city to find work to help her mother and siblings. Miss Sonia listened attentively, nodding her head and smiling. "No problem, my dear. I'm going to introduce you to the business I'm doing, and I'm very sure you'll be able to make enough money, in fact, a lot of money from it, to help your family. I like your courage and the love you have for your family." Mary smiled, thanking her and telling her that God would bless her for helping her. She was so appreciative and grateful for Miss Sonia's kindness. After a few minutes, Mary took a deep breath and asked Miss Sonia, "But, madam, what kind of work is it?" Miss Sonia took a sip from her cup and leaned in closer to Mary. "It's a surrogate business, Mary. I'm into surrogacy. In fact, I'm a surrogate mother. If you can do this work with me, you won't know what to do with all the money you'll make. You'll be able to give your family everything they need." Mary's eyes widened in surprise, unsure of what to say next. Mary looked straight into Miss Sonia's eyes and asked, "You mean you're a surrogate mother? Like, you give birth to children for other people?" Miss Sonia nodded. "Yes, my dear. I've been doing this business for 5 years now, and it has helped me a lot. My family was once poor, just like yours. But through this business, I was able to train my siblings and take care of my parents." Mary's eyes widened in surprise, and she scratched her head. "But, madam, is there any other business I can do to make money apart from being a surrogate mother? I don't think I can have the heart to give birth to a child and then give it away to someone else." Miss Sonia smiled understandingly. "My dear, this business can give you quick money, which is what you need to get out of poverty. Listen, you can do it 2 or 3 times, and then you can decide to quit and look for something else. This business pays a huge amount of money, and you'll love it." Mary thought for a moment, looking directly into Miss Sonia's eyes. "Okay, madam, I'll think about it." Miss Sonia nodded. "Fine, you have all the time to think about it. Take your time, and we'll discuss it again later." With that, Miss Sonia left Mary alone in the bedroom to think about their conversation. Mary sat on the bed, deep in thought, weighing her options carefully. Mary started talking to herself, "Wow, this lady lives in this cool mansion all by herself. This business must really pay well. Should I do it? Can I really give my child, a baby I carried in my stomach for 9 months, to another person I don't even know? I won't be able to visit them or see them." Mary was torn, weighing her options carefully. "But my family's poverty is killing us. Should I do this or not? Oh God, please help me." Mary couldn't sleep that night, thinking about the pros and cons of the surrogacy business. The next morning, she woke up early and went to Miss Sonia's bedroom. Miss Sonia was surprised to see Mary standing in her bedroom doorway. "What's wrong, Mary? Do you want to leave the house?" she asked. Concern etched on her face. Mary walked closer to Miss Sonia and sat down beside her. "Madam, I've thought about it, and I've decided to do the work. The work that has given you so much money to live in this beautiful mansion." Miss Sonia smiled, clearly pleased with Mary's decision. "That's a brave girl you are. Such a brave child. Don't worry, first thing tomorrow morning, I'll introduce you to the doctors I work with. You'll be able to get the money to take care of your family. I love your courage, keep it up." Miss Sonia hugged Mary tightly, a warm smile on her face. That same day, Miss Sonia took Mary to the hospital and introduced her to the doctor she worked with. Luckily, there was a woman who needed a surrogate mother to carry her child. They discussed the business, and Mary was told that she would be carrying a baby for a couple who couldn't conceive on their own. The doctor explained the terms of the agreement, including the payment. A male child, is worth 10 million naira," the doctor said. "And if you carry twins, it's 15 million naira." Mary's eyes widened at the sound of 10 million naira. It was a fortune, and she quickly agreed to do the business with them. She was taken to a room in the hospital, where the doctor did the medical procedure. Mary was then given an injection to stimulate ovulation, and the process of surrogacy began. As part of the agreement, 5 million naira was transferred into Miss Sonia's account that very day. The remaining 5 million naira would be paid after she delivered the baby. Mary and Miss Sonia returned home. Mary couldn't believe how quickly things had moved. She was now a surrogate mother, carrying a child for a couple she had never met. As the days went on, Mary begged her to allow her to visit her parents the next day. "Please, Miss Sonia, I want to go see my parents tomorrow. I want to give them some money so they can feed themselves." Miss Sonia was convinced by Mary's request and was happy with the idea. "Since you don't have an account, you can use my ATM card for now. We'll sort out your account later." Mary was overjoyed and knelt down, thanking Miss Sonia. Miss Sonia helped Mary up and started praising her. "You're a good girl, Mary. I love women like you who would do anything for their families." Mary's eyes started to tear up, and Miss Sonia quickly wiped them away. "Don't cry, Mary. Things will be fine." The next day, Mary traveled back to her village to see her parents. When she arrived, her mother was shocked to see her. "Mary, what happened? You've only been gone for a few days, and you're already back." Mary's mother noticed her new clothes and asked, "Where did you get the money to buy these clothes? What about the bag you left with?" Mary's siblings were also confused and shocked, staring at her in amazement. Mary just smiled and hugged them, not saying a word. Her mother continued to ask questions. "Mary, what's going on? You're not even saying anything. Is everything okay?" Mary's smile started to fade, and she looked down, unsure of how to explain her situation to her mother. Mary and her family sat down in the living room, and Mary explained how she had met a good woman who introduced her to a business that gave her a lot of money. Her mother's eyes widened with excitement. "Are you serious? Can we be part of the money?" Mary looked at her mother, shocked. "You don't even care to ask me what kind of business I'm doing. All you want is money. You should have at least asked me what business the lady introduced me to." Her mother shrugged. "All business is business, as long as it gives money." "I don't care what kind of business it is." Mary, being a kind and hearted person, overlooked her mother's response and promised to open a big shop for them to manage. She also promised to give them 4 million naira to start the business. Her family was overjoyed, and they all hugged her tightly. "We're so proud of you, Mary," her mother said. After spending some quality time with her family, Mary said goodbye and headed back to the city. Her family watched her leave, still in awe of the kind of money she had made so easily. As Mary traveled back to the city, she couldn't help but think about her family's reaction. She was happy that she could provide for them, but she also hoped that they would understand the sacrifices she was making to give them a better life. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, Mary's pregnancy progressed rapidly. Before she knew it, 9 months had passed, and she gave birth to a beautiful baby. But before she could even hold the baby in her arms, the baby was taken away from her and given to the couple who had paid for the surrogacy. Mary was left with the remaining 5 million naira, but she couldn't shake off the feeling of emptiness and loss. She cried bitterly, mourning the loss of the child she had carried in her womb for 9 months. Miss Sonia sat beside her, wiping away her tears and reminding her that she had done it all for her family. As they left the hospital, Mary sent some money to her parents in the village to support the shop they had started. She was happy to see her family's life improving, but she couldn't help feeling a pang of sadness whenever she thought about the baby she had given away. 1 week after giving birth, Miss Sonia came to Mary with some news. "Mary, I have something important to tell you. I've decided to travel to London to complete my education. I had to drop out of school years ago to take care of my family, but now I have the opportunity to go back and finish my studies." Mary looked at Miss Sonia in surprise, feeling a mix of emotions. "Wow, I'm going to miss you," she said, trying to hold back tears. Miss Sonia smiled and hugged Mary. "I'll miss you too, dear. But don't worry, I'll be back soon. In the meantime, you can stay in this house rent-free. Just take care of it for me, and I'll be calling you regularly to check in." 2 days later, Miss Sonia left for London, leaving Mary alone in the big house. Mary tried to settle into her new routine, but she couldn't shake off the feeling of emptiness. It wasn't long before the doctor called her again, this time with another surrogacy proposal. Mary hesitated for a moment, but then she agreed to meet with the doctor. Mary received another 5 million naira for her surrogacy business. As soon as she got the money, she rushed to the village and gave it to her younger brother to start something good. Her brother was very thankful, and so were her mother and younger sister. They were all grateful for what Mary was doing for them, but none of them asked her how she was getting the money. Mary didn't mind, she was just happy to be able to help her family. She returned to the city and, in time, her stomach began to show again. Before long, she gave birth to another baby, which was taken away from her before she even had a chance to hold it. The remaining 5 million naira was given to her, and she sent 3 million naira to her brother again to support his business. 2 months after her second delivery, Mary got another job. This time, the couple involved was not very rich, and they begged her to accept 5 million naira. At first, Mary said no, but then she considered their situation and decided to take the 5 million naira. The couple paid her the full amount up front, explaining that they wouldn't be able to pay her again after the baby was born. Mary accepted the deal and took the 5 million naira. As soon as she returned home with the check, her mother started calling her, asking for another 3 million naira to support her shop. Mary was shocked and confused. "Mom, the shop is not even 3 years old, how can you need 3 million naira already?" she asked. Her mother explained that the market was very costly now, and she needed the 3 million naira urgently to buy more goods. Mary, being a kind and good-hearted person, agreed and sent the 3 million naira to her mother. As time passed, Mary's stomach began to show again, and 9 months quickly approached. She gave birth to another child, and before she knew it, the baby was taken away from her and given to the owners. After a few hours of rest, Mary returned home, feeling a mix of emotions. One evening, Mary sat in the living room, tears streamed down her face. "God, what kind of family did I come from?" she cried out. "All they care about is me sending them money, but nobody asks about the type of work I do to earn that money. Not even my own mother." Mary's voice shook with sadness. "They don't even care to know where I live in the city. All they want is for me to keep sending them money every time they call. Nobody asks how I'm doing or how I'm coping with my business. They don't even care to know what kind of business I do." Mary's tears fell harder as she thought about the sacrifices she had made for her family. "I sacrificed my life for them, and they don't even care to know what I'm going through. All they're interested in is getting money from me." Mary's sadness turned to anger. "Why are they so selfish? Why are they so uncaring? My own family, and they don't even care about me. They only care about what they can get from me." As Mary cried, she felt a deep sense of loneliness. She had given up so much for her family, and yet they didn't even care to know what she was going through. 2 months after Mary gave birth to the third child, she was sitting in the living room watching a movie on a hot afternoon. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her stomach, and before she knew it, blood started flowing from her private part. Mary screamed for help, but she lived alone in the mansion, and there was no one to hear her cries. She quickly grabbed her phone and called the doctor who had been giving her surrogacy work. The doctor answered immediately and sent an ambulance and nurses to rush Mary to the hospital. When they arrived, Mary was bleeding heavily, and the doctors quickly gave her first aid and examined her. After the examination, the doctor told Mary that the last baby she had carried had caused an injury to her womb, which required surgery to correct. Mary burst into tears and asked the doctor how much the surgery would cost. The doctor looked at her with a serious expression and said, "The surgery is going to cost a lot of money, 3.5 million naira. Mary cried bitterly, knowing that she didn't have that kind of money in her account. She told the doctor that she didn't have the money, but she would contact her family to see if they could help. The doctor looked surprised and asked, "What about all the money you've been making from the surrogacy business?" Where has it all gone? Mary shook her head and said, Doctor, you won't understand. The doctor stood there, looking dumbfounded and confused, wondering how someone who had made so much money from surrogacy and could not afford to pay for a life-saving surgery. As soon as the doctor left the patient room, Mary picked up her phone to call her family. She called her mother first, telling her that she was very sick and in the hospital, and that she needed some money for a surgery that she couldn't afford. Please, Mom, I need your help. The doctor says I need 3.5 million naira for the surgery, but I was thinking maybe you could give me 2 million naira and I'll try to find the rest, Mary explained, but her mother's response shocked her. Oh, my daughter, I would have wished to give you that money, but the market is not going well for us now. I don't have that kind of money, and there's no way for me to get it. Mary was stunned. Mother, how could you say something like that? I just sent you 3 million naira not long ago, and now you're telling me that the market is bad? Do you want me to die or what? Mary shouted into the phone. Her mother shouted back, Don't disturb me, Mary. You have so much money, why are you asking me for ordinary 2 million naira? You always give us more than that. Just go and sort out the bill yourself and stop disturbing me and my precious life. And with that, she hung up the phone. Mary sat on the hospital bed, crying and asking God why she had been born to such a mother. After crying for a while, she gathered the courage to call her brother, who she had given a huge amount of money to not long ago. To see if he could help her out, she picked up her phone and dialed her brother's number, hoping against hope that he would be willing to lend her a hand. As soon as Mary's brother picked up the call, Mary explained her situation, telling him that she needed the money urgently for her surgery. But her brother's response was not what she had expected. I don't have that type of money, he said. You know, I just started a new business, and if I give you that money now, it will set back my business. Mary was dumbfounded and confused. Is your business more important than my life? She shouted. What did you people even take me for? Did you know the type of sacrifice I made to provide that money that I gave to you all? Her brother tried to calm her down. My dear sis, we are grateful for the sacrifices you made for us, but for now, I'm sorry, I just can't bring that amount of money from my business. It will collapse my business. Mary was devastated. She shouted hello. Hello. Hello, but her brother had already hung up the phone. She broke down in tears, asking God why she had to come from such a family. As she cried, the doctor came into her room, asking what was wrong. Mary explained everything that had just happened, how she had used all the surrogacy money to support her family, but now they had turned her down. The doctor was shocked. How could you do that? You should have at least established yourself first before supporting your family. Mary begged the doctor to please commence the surgery, promising to pay 1.5 million naira up front and the rest later. But the doctor refused, explaining that he wasn't the only one who owned the hospital. Mary kept begging, promising to go for another surrogacy job after the surgery and pay the doctor extra. But the doctor shook his head, telling her that after the surgery, she wouldn't be able to bear any other child for 5 years. Mary was shocked and confused, and she started crying bitterly. The doctor stood by her, trying to comfort her, telling her not to worry, that by God's grace, she would be fine. Mary stayed in the hospital for 1 week, managing some treatment, and calling her brother and mother to see if they could gather some money to help her out. But every time she called, they would tell her that they didn't have the money, and that she should just manage the treatment she was getting. Mary felt so betrayed. She didn't know what to do anymore. She kept begging the doctor to please consider her situation, promising to pay him back after the surgery, but the doctor kept saying no. I'm sorry, Mary, the doctor said. I understand your situation, but I just can't take that risk. The hospital doesn't only belong to me, and I have to follow the rules. Mary didn't know what to do. She thought of other ways to come up with the money, but nothing seemed to be working. She even tried calling her brother and mother again, but her brother's line wasn't reachable, and her mother wasn't picking up her calls. Mary stayed in the hospital for another week, making it 2 weeks in total. She was managing the treatment, but it wasn't enough. One day, the doctor came to her and explained that the treatment she was getting wasn't enough, and that she needed surgery to correct the problem. "Mary, I'm scared that if we don't do the surgery now, something bad might happen to you," the doctor said. Mary started crying uncontrollably. "Why does God have to make me suffer like this?" she asked. "My own family, who I've helped so much, has rejected me now that I need them the most." The doctor stood by her side, trying to comfort her. "Just take it easy, Mary. Keep begging your family, and maybe God will touch their hearts." But Mary just shook her head, crying. "You wouldn't understand, doctor. You wouldn't understand." Meanwhile, Mary's mother was living her best life, enjoying the wealth that Mary had sent to her. She had opened a sparkling bucket business, and it was thriving. She would spend her days selling buckets and laughing with her friends, completely carefree. Mary's brother, John, was also living large. He had used the money Mary sent him to start a motorcycle parking business in the town, and it was making him a lot of money. He would spend his days counting his profits, hanging out with his friends, and chasing after women. As they enjoyed their lives, they didn't spare a thought for Mary, who was lying in the hospital, suffering and begging for help. They didn't care that she was struggling to pay her medical bills, or that she was crying herself to sleep every night, feeling abandoned and alone. All they cared about was their own selfish desires, and how they could continue to live their lives of luxury, without lifting a finger to help their own flesh and blood. As Mary lay in the hospital, she couldn't help but feel bitter towards her family. She had sacrificed everything for them, and this was how they repaid her? By abandoning her in her time of need? She felt like she was all alone in the world, with no one to turn to. At midnight, Mary lay in her hospital bed, unable to sleep. She sat up, her eyes welling up with tears as she talked to herself. "Oh God, why did you allow me to fall victim to circumstance?" she asked, her voice shaking. "After all the sacrifices I made for my family, they turned me down when I needed them most. They couldn't even spare a little money to help me, despite all the risks I took to make that money." Mary's tears flowed freely as she thought about her family's betrayal. "They're happy I'm in the hospital," she sobbed. "If I die, they don't even care." As she cried, Mary raised up her eyes and looked around the hospital room. She took a deep breath and said, "This is a lesson to every young person out there. Take care of yourself first. Establish yourself financially before you try to build others up. When life gives you an opportunity, use it to build yourself up, not just others." Mary's words trailed off as she broke down in tears again. She collapsed onto the hospital bed, exhausted and heartbroken. Soon, she drifted off to sleep, surrounded by the beeping machines and sterile hospital smells. The next day, Mary's situation took a turn for the worse. She started bleeding uncontrollably, and despite the doctors' and nurses' best efforts to control the bleeding, it was too much for her body to handle. The medical team tried everything they could to save Mary's life, but it was too late. As the doctors and nurses surrounded her, Mary's body slowly gave up, and she took her last breath. The doctors and nurses were devastated. They had grown attached to Mary's kind and gentle spirit, and they couldn't believe that she was gone. They had never expected that someone as selfless and caring as Mary would meet such a tragic end, all because her family had abandoned her in her time of need. As they covered Mary's lifeless body, the doctor couldn't help but feel a deep sense of sorrow. He leaned in close to Mary's body and whispered, "Mary, my dear, you took so many risks for your family, and this is how they repaid you. May your gentle soul rest in peace. May you find comfort in the bosom of the Lord." The doctor's eyes welled up with tears as he stood up and turned away, his heart heavy with grief. He couldn't help but wonder what kind of family would abandon someone as kind and loving as Mary, and what kind of world would allow someone like her to slip away unnoticed.